What's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Welcome to the final episode of making a Dub Techno track inside of the AKAI Force. This is episode 12. What we're going to be doing today is simply recording the song out of the AKAI Force via some analog cables into my computer, and we're going to do a little bit of gentle mastering today using the Ozone 8 plugin from Izotope. Stick around, guys. If you're wondering, guys, why we're not just exporting this track directly out of the AKAI Force, it's because there's no song mode or there's no export mode yet inside of the AKAI Force. I'm assuming that it's coming, but, I don't work for AKAI. I don't really know about that. So what we're going to do for a workaround is we're going to go ahead and, just record this out of the Force the old-fashioned way. I've got a really high quality cable here, and I would suggest, for recording something like this out of a, unit that you're really, proud of and spend a lot of time on, that you're going to want to use, the best quality cable that you can get a hold of in your studio. Got some flack for suggesting people use monster cable in the past, but, I'm not going to stop suggesting high quality cables, guys. See here, these are some really high quality TRS cables, which means that they're balanced cables, and they'll help eliminate extra noise and hum in the system. I really recommend, if you can afford it, I couldn't afford it, but you go the extra mile, if this is something you're passionate about. So TRS balanced cables are the best cables I've got in here. That's what we're using today. I'm gonna run the analog output from the Force directly into my Focusrite Scarlett interface. We're going to make sure that the gain is down on both the left and the right channel, and we're going to make sure that the switch on the front is set to line and not instrument, because this is a line signal that we're sending into the computer here. I don't need to worry about direct monitoring, so I've got that turned off right now. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and fire up like SoundForge, which is my main go-to audio editor, and we'll just literally set a level, and we'll go ahead and record this into the computer, guys. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set our input level to be getting the maximum volume that we can get here, but without clipping. How I do this is I've got my speakers turned off right now because they're not, really relevant, but I'll just hit record inside of, SoundForge, right? We'll go down and I'll play like, one of the big scenes that's real loud, inside of our jam here, and we'll see now the actual level that, we're recording. And we're trying to get quite a bit more level than that inside of the computer. And what I'll do is I'll adjust the volume of the AKAI Force, and I'll adjust the gain on the Scarlett interface there until our level is a little bit hotter than this. Right now, I've got the volume on the AKAI Force at about 3/4 of the way up, which is a really hot output signal from the Force there. And I'm just going to turn the gain on these inputs up the tiniest little bit. And I'll take a look at the screen here. Maybe we'll, change to a different scene. Hopefully this is pretty balanced, You want to get a pretty hot level, so that you don't have to, raise that up after the fact. You want to get, the hottest level you can going into the computer. Because, once you have to raise that up in the computer, you're also going to be raising up your level of your noise floor, which is, basically just the amount of noise that's coming through in your signal without any audio coming through. I'm turning the volume up on the Force like the tiniest little bit more, and I'm going to turn these gains up. They're about at, I'd say, 10 o'clock position now. And we're getting closer to where I want to be. In fact, we're a little bit too hot. You want to make sure that, the level is never, ever clipping, hitting harder than 0 per se. So I'll just adjust these down a tiny little bit. You can take as much or as little time with this sort of part of the process as you like. But I really find that, you want to get it as good as you can. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that level, guys. Now, you guys have heard the track before. potentially for 11 episodes worth of hearing this track. You might be sick of it by now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a time lapse of me actually recording the track into the computer, and then we'll return with the actual bit of gentle mastering that I'm hoping to do inside of Izotope's Ozone 8. Okay, and here's our actual track that's been recorded out of the Force inside of SoundForge here. And what I think is really important to look at and to note, guys, is that you can literally see in the waveform of this track, you can literally see that there's distinct and definitive sections of audio. Okay, so like over here, you can see that that's like a mellow little intro section as we start to build in to like the intro of the song. And you can see that as we get to about this part here, that we're really into the meat of it and we're doing lots of kick drums and whatnot. And you can see that as we get to about this section here, that we're about, you know, chilling out a little bit, and we're kind of bringing it back in level and taming it down. And then you can see we really bring it down here, and then we pop it back in again for the outro. And this is like really a representation of that ebb and flow and push and pull and forward momentum that I'm always talking to you guys about. To, you know, to actually see it, you know, in a visual representation of your track is definitely like, you know, something to really help get your mind around what I'm talking about. So even if you're not mastering your stuff, definitely take a moment and look at the rendered or recorded waveforms of your finished tracks, so that you can see, you know, if yours are, you know, getting an ebb and flow look to them like this. And if you can't see like definitive sections and breaks and stuff, you might want to go back and think about your arrangement a little bit more. Let's go ahead and load this up into Izotope and do a little bit of mastering on this, guys. I always wonder how best to show this stuff to you guys because I'm not really set up for screen recording at this time. So bear with me here. This is Izotope's Ozone 8, and we're going to do just some really gentle mastering on this today to help the track, you know, be that much more prepared for online streaming. We're going to go, I've selected, you know, pretty much the loudest section of our track, the real meat of our track here, and I've stuck the cursor there, and you'll see why in just a moment. If we click our mastering assistant icon, it's literally going to start asking us some questions. What are you going for? Well, I'm going for the target of a streaming, or I could select CD or a reference track, but right now we're just, you know, our intention with this track is to put it online for streaming when we're done. And so now the Izotope plugin is just waiting for me to play the audio, and it's going to start analyzing that audio, and it's going to make some suggestions to us as to the mastering preset that it thinks this track would benefit from. Forgive the audio as it does a bit of freak out there and sets the level. Okay. So what it's done now is it's put, you know, it's analyzed our track and it's put up some suggestions that it thinks, you know, would be a good, you know, thing for us to, you know, to put on this track. And we're going to just go through these one by one, and we're going to see what Ozone suggests. The first thing that it suggests is on the equalizer tab. It's analyzed the frequencies, and it suggested a few changes there. It suggested a really gentle boost here of 0.7 decibels over at like 18.3 kilohertz. So just a really tiny boost in the high frequencies of the track up at 0.7. I think we're going to pretty much keep that. I think I'll bring it down to like maybe 0.4 instead of 0.7. This is suggesting at about 1.17 kilohertz. It's suggesting a tiny little boost of like half a decibel. We're going to go ahead and pretty much leave that. They suggested 0.6. I think I'll put it down to 0.4. Here they suggested quite a dramatic bump at 3.98 hertz. It's a boost of 1.9. I'm going to listen to this. I am going to leave that suggestion, but we're going to bring the gain just to 1 decibel, not 1.9. Here we have a recommendation to bring the low end down at about 86.1. They think that we're pushing a little bit too much lows. I'm going to go ahead and agree with that, but I'm just going to attenuate that by negative 1 decibel instead of 1.5 decibels. So just some general, EQ settings over the top of the mix there. They don't think that there's anything that needs to be adjusted with our mix dynamically. You can see we've got a pretty, good level through the mix. So there's, this is actually being bypassed. They're not suggesting any change in dynamics. Here we have a dynamic EQ inside of Ozone 8, which will attenuate some frequencies based on how loud they get in the mix. And let's go ahead and listen to what they're suggesting here. It's all sounding pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and leave those suggestions as they are. And then lastly, we're going to go ahead and go over to the maximizer page. And there's some really important settings here, like transient emphasis, and transient, stereo, transient boost. Transient is like the attack of your sound, the very, very, beginning millisecond that gives your sounds the punch, per se. So you can, use this tool to get your entire mix a little bit more punchy. They recommend that we have an output ceiling of negative 1 decibel. I like to be a little cheeky and bring that up to negative 0.5 decibel and get literally 0.5 decibel more volume out of the mix. Probably shouldn't be doing that, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. And lastly, I'm going to go ahead and bring the threshold down on their maximizer setting to a little bit more, so that we're dipping and we're actually affecting the mix a little bit more on this mastering tab. And just this is the maximizer, so we're just sort of bringing up our low levels and squashing down our peaks and getting a less dynamic mix and a more even and squashed mix, per se. You want to be careful here and not over squash your mix. You want to see that these peaks are being attenuated by a small amount. If your peaks are being driven down 3 and 4 and 5 decibels, whoa, ease up on that threshold. But we're, being super gentle here, and you'll see what I mean as we actually compare the rendered version of our track from Ozone and the original recorded version of our track. That we're just attenuating those peaks a very small amount. And what this maximizer does is, you really want this maximizer settings, because this is, helping your track get to the, to the actual volume that you want it to be at. So this is it, guys. These are the settings that I'm going to go with. It hasn't suggested any actual transient emphasis. Our, transients and punchiness is all in the right place. It's suggested a tiny little bit of stuff in the stereo independence field, which is fine, and some very, very gentle, mastering, just to kind of taking off our, main peaks and just kind of bringing up the overall level of the mix, which I'll show you. We're going to go ahead and render this out, and I'll show you back to back the visual audio. I also want to show you guys this real quick, as that when you're using Ozone 8 here and you go to render, it defaults to a 16-bit depth of your track, but I really recommend you set that to 24-bit, and you don't need to, get your track down to 16-bit. Leave it at 24-bit, provided that you've recorded it, in 24-bit. Pretty much 24-bit is the standard these days. If you can, stay away from 16-bit and stick to 24-bit for your recording and for your exporting. I just want to take this opportunity, guys, to give a massive shout out and a big thanks to my buddy Spidericemidas for writing the original groove that inspired this. I also want to give a big shout out to my buddy Matthew Stratton, whose vocals I sampled that really kind of helped pull this whole project together. I really appreciate the collab, guys. Thanks a lot. Let's go ahead and take a look at these waves again. So this is the original recorded wave outside of the AKAI Force. And let me load up the mastered version. And you can see that our mastered version is a tiny little bit hotter. So let me do that again. Okay. So here's our original version. and take a quick look at, you know, where those peaks are. And then, whoops, sorry about that. I'm doing that wrong. So there's our, you know, original version. So you can see just how hot that we're getting these peaks are. And you can really see how the peaks go up and down. We got just full dynamics here. And then here's our mastered mix. And you can see that, you know, the peaks don't quite as, you know, go up and down, and you've actually got kind of a, you know, this is called limiting, when you push the level up a little bit hotter overall, but you limit what those peaks are doing. And you'll notice that throughout the whole mix, you know, you've kind of got this, you know, this size of a line here. That's kind of like your, you know, like the meat of your mix, like the low end, like that sort of, you know, and you definitely want that to be, you know, like an inch or so tall like this. You don't want this middle line to be super, super thin with lots of really loud peakies. That just means that your drums are really loud, but you won't have a lot of body in your mix per se. And you also don't really want this middle line to be like all the way up to the top without any peakies at all. Then you've just got, you know, your mix smashed so hot that it's just the life will be gone out of it. No dynamics left. So this is what I mean by gently mastering stuff. You can see that it's been mastered a little bit, and there's a little bit of limiting taking place, but you can also still see that we have some dynamics and some, you know, life left in our mix. Thanks for watching, guys. I know this has been a pretty epic series, 12 episodes of writing a track inside of the AKAI Force, but I think you'll agree at the end of this that the AKAI Force is really, really capable, and you can, in fact, write finished music using nothing but just the AKAI Force. So this track will definitely end up on the next EP that I put out. I write music under the moniker Prism Prime, and in fact, I just had a new EP that's just come out this weekend. It's called These Thoughts Don't Belong to You. I'd really love it if you guys go and check that out as well. It's available on all of your favorite streaming platforms. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.
That's just my style.